Vidhammer Fantasy.
Welcome back to Vidhammer. In this video, I'm going over my third round match at the April 2,500 point Darkside tournament in Sarasota. This round I go up against Colin and his Bretonnians. I give a full description of my army list in the pre-tournament video, and I go over Colin's list in the first round video where he played Bob's Orcs. Our scenario for this round has an 18-inch square box in the middle of the board, and you get bonus points for having fortitude points in the box at the end of the game, and for having control of the terrain features. We decide to play our terrain as two mysterious forests, some impassable terrain in the upper left, and a normal wall in the lower right. For spell generation, Colin's level 4 gets Harmonic Convergence, Ice Shard Blizzard, Chain Lightning, and Curse of the Midnight Wind, while his level 2 takes Wilson's Wild Form and Amber Spear. On my side, my Grey Seer takes the usual Warp Lightning, the Plague Priest gets Plague and Cloud of Corruption, and the Grey Seer ends up with Blessed with Filth, Wither, Scorch, and I take the Skitterleap signature spell this time instead of the Dreaded 13. I win the roll for board edge and take the right side of the table and start deployment with my 2 giant rat units as he puts down his archers. Then we both do our war machines. I follow with my first slave block, so I still haven't played my strengths, and he puts down his horde peasant block. I go ahead and put my other slave block down with enough space for another unit to go in between. He throws down his knights errant, and I put my clan rats between the slave blocks. I figure this gives me the most versatility, since I can throw the Fellblade in there, or use it as a bunker, depending on how the rest goes. He followed with the Knights of the Realm right next to his Knights Errant, so I certainly want to throw my slaves that way. Thinking that I'm going to want to put my strengths down at the bottom and try for some countercharges on the Knights, I go ahead and put my Doom Wheel up at the top, since it's the most out-of-the-way area. Unfortunately, that gives him the opportunity to put his Pegasus Knights at the bottom, which would have been the perfect target for the Doom Wheel. I go ahead and put my Plague unit and the Hell Pit at the bottom, while he puts the Grail Knights up at the top. For characters, my Grey Seer and BSB go with the Clan Rat bunker, the Warlord is in the Storm Vermin, and I put my Warlock Engineer with the lower slaves. His Lord and BSB go with the Knights Errant, the Damsel is in with the Peasants, and the Paladin goes with the Grail Knights. Deployment doesn't look too bad as long as I can get those slaves up and hold back that center. I should be able to get some points on the bottom side without having to lose too much up at the top. Colin forgoes the roll for the first turn to get his blessing that gives his knights 6+ ward save. So I get the first turn, but not until his Pegasus Knights make their Vanguard move. With the Pegasus Knights being close to the Plague unit, I have to restrain from charging. Then the Doom Wheel and the Hell Pit move out a decent amount. Enough so my upper giant rats can run south and leave the wheel to shoot the archers. I put the Plague unit and the slaves out enough to be tempting, but not to make it an auto charge from his cavalry units. Our first magic phase is 6 versus 5. I used my first 2 for Warp Lightning on his Pegasus Knights, which he dispels with 3 of his. With my remaining 4, I go for Plague, and I roll like I usually do, so he's able to dispel it with his 3. In shooting, the Doom Wheel hits the upper archers for 2 wounds, then I have the lightning cannons make some crisscross shots across the central knights, with the first one taking out 2 of the Knights of the Realm, and the second one didn't like the way the slaves were looking at it, so it decided to overload and take out 10 of them, along with a couple of clan rats for good measure. On Colin's turn, the Knights Errant tries to restrain from having to charge, but they have a -2 to their leadership from the items, and they end up failing to restrain, and failing the distance into the slaves as well. The Grail Knights, however, don't have a problem making it into the Doom Wheel that's off the top of the screen, since they get to roll 4 d6 and keep 3. The Pegasus Knights reform to 1 wide and slide by the far side of my Plague unit. And this is just one more of those times where flyers have their way with me, because I just don't plan against them well enough. His other units move up with the men-at-arms getting surprisingly close. Magic is 6 versus 5 again, and Colin uses his first 2 for Ice Shard Blizzard on my upper cannon, and even knowing that it might take away its shooting for a turn, I let this one go since he rolled reasonably high and I would probably need to roll 4 of mine to dispel it. Instead, I save the dice and dispel his attempt at Chain Lightning. For shooting, the lower archers fail to get a flaming wound on the Hell Pit, while the upper ones take out a few slaves. Then the trebuchets pull off my patented move and both misfire on turn 1. But nobody can do it quite like I can, and he isn't able to have them both blow up. They just can't fire for 2 turns. For the first combat, that's off the top of the screen, Grail Knights are able to do 5 wounds and take out the Doom Wheel, and he reforms to have them face the upper Warp Lightning Cannon. On to turn 2, and now I've got my usual problem of my own little units blocking my big units from making the sharp turn charges. I have the Warp Fire Thrower charge the lower archers just to get them out of the way, and he stands and shoots and actually does me a favor by killing them off. Now the Plague unit can get a charge on the men-at-arms, but he has them flee. Damn it. The archers and the Knights of the Realm are equally far away, but I have them redirect and roll for the 11, but I'm not that lucky. Then I try to close the slave blocks in to block the charge through the center into my Grey Seer, and this is where inexperience and lack of foresight start to shine. I swift reform my slaves and try to bring them together. Then I realize that with the Knights being only 3 models wide, he still has enough room to make it through the gap. I try to get the giant rats in to block it, but there's still enough room to make that charge if he wants. I just hate my life. The only way I'm going to keep him from dying is to skitter leap him out of there in the magic phase. But that's what I took that spell for anyways. I move the other stuff up and try to think that this is a lesson learned. In Magic, I use 5 dice for Plague on the Knights of the Realm, and he rolled 4 dice to dispel it, but wasn't able to stop it. Unfortunately, with the Damsel in there, they have Magic Resistance 2 and only 1 model dies along with a wound on the Damsel. But the spell isn't over yet. It backfires, and Colin has it jump into my slave block, where it does 19 wounds to my guys before the spell finally ends. Then I have the Grey Seer use Skitter Leap to get out of the Clan Rats, and I get Irresistible Force. I put him in the Storm Vermin just in time to roll a 4 for the backlash. He doesn't get sucked into the Void, but it takes out 10 Storm Vermin, making me rethink a lot about the Magic phase in general. For shooting this time, something amazing happens. My first Warp Lightning Cannon manages to pass its Ice Shard Blizzard test, and it shoots for the Knights, killing off 2 of the Knights of the Realm, and it manages to kill off the level 4 caster as well. The second puts a shot on the Knights Errant for 4. I can't believe this. My cannons actually did something. I'm amazed and happy. Back to the Bretonnians, and here comes the charges. Both Central Knight units charge my upper slaves, and even though it's nice that he didn't go after the Clan Rat bunker, it's not so nice since my Plague unit and Storm Vermin have too far to go to get to them. And since there aren't a lot of slave models left, they're probably going to break before that happens. Both of my lightning cannons also get charged, so they're out of the running. The only thing that would make me happy at this point is if the men-at-arms would run off the board, so naturally they rally. Magic is 9 versus 6, and he goes for Wyson's Wild Form first, and I'm not really thinking that the slave battle is going to turn out any differently with or without that spell. So I let it go, thinking I could stop something else, but with his level 4 caster gone, there really wasn't anything else to cast. So, oh well. Then for shooting, the lower archers make another stab at wounding the Hell Pit, but still can't manage it. Then the trebuchets are back in action now, and one of them takes a shot at Sweet Lovin', but it drifts off. The second goes after the clan rat bunker, but misfires and just can't fire this turn. Finally, the upper archers take out a single giant rat from that upper shaft. Combat sees both of my cannons pulling a prom date special, with the upper knights being able to reform, but the Pegasus knights just couldn't restrain. The central combat ends up looking the same way. The slaves lose a lot of guys, 2 incoming knight charges with full attacks on the sides, and some beefy characters to boot. They're steadfast, but with the general's decision to relocate south, they fail the rerollable 5 and explode. Kind of a bummer, but what I don't get is why I let him overrun and reform. These were slaves. They just explode. I just wasn't thinking. I'm sure I was distracted by moves somehow. Hell Pit makes it into the lower archers as I try to get my units back into some formation I might be able to manage, but it's just not working. I've got too many options for him to charge, and I don't realize what they are until after I've made my moves. Magic this time is 7 versus 5, and I use the first 4 dice for Plague on his Knights of the Realm, but he dispels this with all of his dice. Then I try for Warp Lightning, and I roll a 1 for the number of hits, so it backfires, but luckily it fails to wound the Engineer, who only had a single wound left. For combat, the archers fail the fear test, and Sweet Lovin' takes out several guys, but not enough to take away the final rank. So he does stay steadfast, but still fails the leadership test and gets trampled as Lovin' exits the board. A couple more charges come in here as the Knights of the Realm charge the giant rats, and his Grail Knights go for the long charge on the Storm Vermin, but only because we didn't know that the extra die that they get from the charge is only for the first charge that they declare. So it was used up on the cannon. He didn't make the charge though, only missed it by an inch, which really puts those charge ranges into perspective. That distance just seemed impossible, but it was still only an inch away. The Pegasus Knights also come back on the board as well. Colin's magic is 6 versus 5 once again, and he rolls all 6 for Weisson's Wild Form, but he rolls like me this time, and I'm able to dispel it with my 5. In the shooting phase, the trebuchets both go for the Plague Furnace, but the outcome is the same, with one shot drifting off and the other misfiring and preventing the shot. Combat is fairly simple, with the slaughtering of rats, and this time he goes for an overrun instead of a reform, but only because he's got a plan. And the plan was to flee when I charged them with my Storm Vermin. Damn it again. He's playing more like a Skaven than I am, but it serves him well, especially since I redirect into the Knights Errant and fail the charge range. No glory for the Fellblade this turn. I actually managed to block off his charge opportunities this time, and even remember about that scurrying banner in my Plague unit. I used that to move the unit up so its front arc covers about half of the field at this point. I end up rolling double 6s for the toughness tests, but I only lose 1 in the end. Sweet Lovin' is also on the board, just not on camera right now. I roll Snake Eyes for my magic phase, but hey, at least I get a channel. I use all 3 to try for Plague on the fleeing Knights of the Realm, hoping to take them below 25% so they hopefully would rally, but spell fails. Colin rolled for the game end and got a 6, so the game would end after the 4th turn. But we actually thought it was the 5th turn, so we just added up the point totals as it was. Colin should have gotten a final turn though, which most likely would have altered the outcome, since as it was, we ended up in a draw, being about 15 points apart in the total. We both had a lot of points in the box and several terrain features for each of us, so in the final tally, we ended up 16 to 15, and I don't even remember who had the extra point. So that was how I end this tournament. As expected, the only win I could get was the one that they gave me. Honestly, though, it was a great event, and I'm glad to see the local community on the rise for a change. Hope you like this battle report. Be sure and check back for more videos each week. Do me a favor and subscribe, like the video if you want to see more, and check it out on Facebook and Twitter as well. Feel free to leave a comment if you have any tactics or matchups you'd like to see. And until next time from Vidhammer, keep fighting.